Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Monday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. This is a busy one on the show. We have some Stanley Cup Final talk. We got the NBA Finals going on. The Canadian Football League started their season, and we get into boxing and WWE with some big shows coming up this weekend. So, a lot to get to. Let's get to it and start talking some hockey. I have spent all day thinking of a Stanley Cup Series Bobrovsky pun. You would think it would be there, but it's not. But he stole the show in Game 1. It was the Sergei Bobrovsky show for the Florida Panthers as they take a 1-0 series lead over the Oilers of Edmonton. And for Florida, look, probably don't want to duplicate that 4 to 7 times, or I guess 3 to 6 times throughout the rest of the series. But it's nice to get one of those when you get them, as Sergei Bobrovsky was phenomenal for the Florida Panthers. What more can you say? He was a brick wall between the pipes for Florida. And there were times where it was chaotic and it felt like there was a real opportunity to break through for Edmonton, but every time either the puck bounced their way or he was there to make that save. And that is such a huge boost for Florida, because you look at it now from a Panthers perspective. We did not play well in Game 1. Now we only have to play well 3 more times to win this, in their minds. Obviously, if they can still play well and lose. But we just now need 3 more to go out and get the Stanley Cup. That is such a massive, massive thing for this team. That was legitimately one of the best goaltending performances that you will see in the Stanley Cup Finals. Given the stage, given who you are playing, all of those things, that was incredible from Sergei Bobrovsky in Game 1. And for the Oilers, they did everything but score. They outchanced them. They got a lot of shots on the goal. Now, I do think that there was a little bit of score effects going on in this, but not to the point that what we saw. Like, Edmonton was just simply the better team in Game 1 of this series, and they didn't end up being able to capitalize. And so for them, I would caution against too many changes. It does seem like there are a couple lineup changes. We'll get to one big one here in a second, but that really is just hey, keep playing your game, and eventually those are going to break through. But they just didn't in that first game. And I think for Edmonton, McDavid was just excellent again. Draisaitl was there. He I thought was a bit more impactful in this game, but they are going to need to break through. But overall, it's a nice proof of concept. Like, you're down 1-0 in this series, and from an Edmonton standpoint, on the opposite of the Florida thing, you basically feel like you have to win 5 times now. Like, you played good enough to win in Game 1 and didn't, so now you have to play good enough to win and win still 4 more times to be able to break through. And we'll see. I like the lineup change tonight. Cody Ceci checks out of the lineup, in a move that should have happened a very long time ago. There was absolutely no reason for Cody Ceci to be in this lineup. I mean, one could make a fairly compelling argument all season long. But certainly, given the wide range of very poor outcomes that CC has produced over the last little while, it was mind-boggling to me that he was still getting into these games and still getting these types of opportunities. And this makes them a better hockey team today. Even when they brought Broberg in, we'll still keep Cody CC in, even if we're going to split up CC and Nurse. Like, I want to know what the justification was, because if you are saying that CC deserves to stay in the lineup, then you are basically saying Nurse doesn't, because that is one of the worst defensive pairings that we've seen in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far, and they've obviously been able to survive it. They're still playing. But if you are saying that it wasn't CC's fault, then you are saying it was Nurse's, and you have a gigantic problem on your hands. So just in having to defend it, it doesn't make any sense. I think this makes them a better hockey team tonight, having CC out of the lineup and a little bit better defensively. Not that they needed to defend any better than they did. They really did limit the chances for the Panthers, and Florida was able to capitalize. We'll see how Skinner rebounds, we'll see how Florida rebounds, and we'll see how Edmonton bounces back. But I do think we see a better game in this game tonight. I'm really, really interested to see how Edmonton kind of responds and what kind of pushback we see from Florida after kind of getting their heads caved in shots-wise and chances-wise in game number 1. All right, that is the story from the NHL. Let's shift now to the NBA, where it has a feeling of over. The NBA Finals are in a bit of a pause now after a Game 2 win for the Boston Celtics on Sunday, extending their lead in the NBA Finals to 2 games. And for Dallas, for Dallas fans anyway, this has to feel very hopeless right now, because you got the exact game that everyone was saying Boston had to watch out for, and you still lost. It was the bad shooting game. It was one of these nights Boston's three-pointers are just going to dry up, and you can come in and win that game. No one considered the fact that Boston would have one of those nights, and Dallas would still lose. The Celtics had a really bad shooting performance. Tatum was really bad, and they still couldn't get the job done. Why? A number of different reasons. One, once again, Brown was exceptional in this game. Defensively, he was awesome. Offensively, he was helping to generate everything that they needed to. And he has really stepped up. Like, I understand if you were to start a franchise tomorrow, you are picking Tatum over Brown. You are picking Tatum and probably a wide number of players before you get to Jaylen Brown. But Brown has been the better player in the first 2 games of this series, and it isn't particularly close. And yes, Tatum has done a lot of those little things to help you win, right? Like, defensively, he has been good. Rebounding, he has been good. Playmaking, he has been good. But shooting, he has been abysmal. And shot selection has been bad, too, to the point of being detrimental to the team. So, I'm not saying he's been a net negative, but he certainly hasn't been a net positive in the way that Jaylen Brown has been. Also, Derek White has been phenomenal. The shot block, yes, there was a bit of a foul. The people calling, like, oh, well, there was a foul at the end. It's like, man, there were about 8 that you could call before that one. Like, that literally was a foul, yes. And given the situation, missing that kind of sucks. At the same time, they let a lot worse go than that. Like, that is a letter of the law one. And if they called it the freaking out today where how can you call that foul in that type of a situation? Like, there's a lot of playing the results going on here right now. But White still comes up with a great block. He had a couple other really good blocks in that game. He has completely shut down basically anyone he has been put on, and he has made enough shots that it has helped carry the water for this team offensively. And then Drew Holiday has been exceptional as well. Defensively, again, just doing everything that Boston needs him to do to get victories. He has done it. And on the Mavericks side, someone needs to step up who's not Luka, because Luka was brilliant. His playmaking is exceptional. That pass where Doris was losing her mind on it, and rightfully so. He's driving baseline. You have Porzingis on him, and I think it was White. It was either White or Holiday trailing, and he just does like a no. I don't even know how he knew Exum existed on this planet at that point. And he does the look around, and Exum doesn't even have to move. He gets it right where he wants it, and he nails a 3. That was a beautiful play from one of the great players in the NBA today. Just an exceptional play from Luka Doncic, and it was just incredible shots, incredible baskets. Boston was targeting him defensively, and I do think that a lot of what happened late in the game was Luka was wearing out. And this is where I think there is a bigger picture. Like, he needs more help just in general. Like, just from a math standpoint, he can score only so many points in a game. You need more of your players to score, especially when White's going off, when Holiday's going off, when Porzingis is going off, when Pritchard's hitting bank shots from half court, which was I thought, just like a quick aside, I thought that was a huge moment in that game. And I don't think that's been talked about enough today. Dallas was getting that momentum back, and it felt like, okay, we got this. We're only down 6 going into the fourth quarter. We got this. And that shot, and it's 9, and it is only a difference of 3 points. That is how that shot works. But it just felt like the dagger. Like that there was an entire quarter to play, but winning a quarter by 7 is a whole lot easier to do than winning a quarter by 10. And I get it is only one shot, but that was such a momentum boost for Boston. And it finally was the shot that crowd was waiting for. They were that, like, you hear it kind of cliche among NBA announcers sometimes, or, oh, the roof would have come off this place if he would have hit that shot. Boston had about 8 of those that they missed, and they make that one, and the place is going nuts. And it felt like at that point, there was nothing Dallas was going to be able to do. And they made a run, and they got it close, but never got it close enough. And I think that 3 points was a huge swing in this game. But it wouldn't have needed to be that way if Dallas could get something from someone else. And like I said before, just for counting up points, they need more of them. But also, they need to take a bit of the pressure off of Luka. And this offense only runs through Luka, I understand that. But there was a point late in the game where they sat Luka in the fourth quarter, Kyrie tried to do his thing, and he was awful. And then Luka came back in, but he was hanging out back. Like, it was basically 4-on-5. That you still have to watch him because he's Luka. But he was hanging out by the logo for a lot of the possession, letting Kyrie do his thing. And then with 4 seconds left, it was like, okay, well, I'm not getting it. Here, Luka, you get it. And he has to do something. It ends up being not a great look. And Boston ends up going back the other way. They need Kyrie to be better, to give Luka a bit of a breather, even when Luka's on the floor. Like, if you can buy him 1 or 2 or 3 extra possessions with Kyrie just being awesome, that is, I think, something that is going to be able to help out the Mavericks here. I think the Mavs will get a little bit better at home. Role players just tend to play better at home, but they need Kyrie to get back to the Kyrie that he was a series ago. Everything he does right now feels like it is out of the flow of the offense. He has been completely taken away from anything when Luka is out there doing his thing. They have done a great job of cutting him off. And then when Kyrie decides, okay, I need to get mine, it basically, like, it feels like one of those cartoons back in the day where you would have like the main storyline, and then for 5 minutes we've just gone off over here and it's a whatever, right? Like you have your regular Bugs Bunny and Tweety whatever, and then for 3 minutes you have something else. I don't know why I'm blanking on every other Looney Tune, but you get my point. You get just like a quick like, oh, and by the way, here's this B story, that whatever. Kyrie's the B story right now. Luka is out there doing the main thing, and now for something completely different. Kyrie goes out, it feels like a completely different team. It feels like another game. It doesn't feel like anything that the Mavs are doing right now, and it's not working. So again, credit Boston, but he needs to be better in those spots. And just a quick note, it's not, I don't think it's anything actionable or anything like that. The one knock I have on Boston, I have hated the looks that they have got coming out of timeouts. And that they've been bailed out either by offensive rebounds or by stops at the other end. But they, a couple of times in that game, when it was still in the balance, they'd call a timeout, and the timeout was basically just to settle everything down. But hey, while we're here for 60 seconds, may as well try to get a good shot away, huh? And it ends up with like White taking a deep three or a random scramble, and someone has to hit a bailout shot and it doesn't work. So that was just something I noticed, that Boston, I think, needs to get a lot better at their plays coming out of timeouts, because those are easy times where you can set up a fun play and then get into your regular offense some other way. So that is the story from the NBA. Let's go now to the Canadian Football League. While hockey and basketball are wrapping up, CFL's just getting started, and it was a pretty fun opening week. Let's talk about it. The Canadian Football League season began with 4 games over the weekend. Let's break them all down. And of course, you see the team behind me. I have to start with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They are 1-0 after a win over the Edmonton Elks, and I thought that was a really strong game from Saskatchewan. And admittedly, I knew the result before I watched the game, so I didn't have the same ups and downs as fans watching that live would have had. But I thought this was a really great game, and I think particularly on the defensive side, you can see Mace's impact. Their tackling was great. They rallied to the football so well. There is a lot of speed on this defense, and they just swarmed the ball carrier so many times in that game. That was a really cool thing to see, because that to me is a hallmark of some strong defenses, when you are able to do that. And then they came up with huge stops when they needed it to. Down by quite a few in the fourth quarter. The offense definitely showed up, for sure, but I thought it was the defense coming up with some big stops, coming up with some big plays, forcing some turnovers that allowed the Riders to get back into that game and eventually get the victory. It was the defense stepping up when they needed them to. Corey Mesa, I think, did a really good job. I didn't really notice anything that he did particularly wrong in this game or anything like that. There was talk about the discipline, and you get a dude who gets busted for popping a guy in the face. Seems fair. So that isn't ideal, but otherwise I thought discipline-wise they were pretty good. And then offensively, they had a few players step up. We said on here that this offense goes from good to great if Bane can really elevate his game, and boy did he. Now, Schaefer Baker and Emlis didn't, but Bane was the star of this game from a Saskatchewan standpoint. That big play threat, he beat the DBs just straight a few times, and Harris was able to hit him. So you get that big play potential. And then when they needed kind of a security blanket or a safety blanket, it was Stearns who was the 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6 guy. For Calgary fans, the old Markway McDaniel receptions. I think that is such an important part of this offense, and an important part of a Trevor Harris offense. Like they got the big plays, and those are great. You're not going to get them from that dude every week. You are going to need those drive extenders, and they had quite a few of those from Stearns. Schaefer Baker did what he does a couple of times, but he was kind of quiet, and I thought Emelis was really quiet too. But you had the big plays when you needed them from Stearns and from Bain to help carry the water on the offensive side. For the Edmonton Elks, I came away from this game feeling pretty good about this team and thinking that this was, like I said before, Edmonton is an improved football team from a year ago. We saw that in this game, and I think specifically on the defensive side, that the run D was dominant. AJ Ouellette got nothing in this game. This was a real strong argument for not paying running backs, because Ouellette was a non-factor in this football game, and that is what forced guys like Stearns and Baines to have to step up. But for 3 quarters, that put Saskatchewan behind the chains a lot. 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, even some 2nd and 11, 2nd and 12 situations, and Edmonton's defense was able to pin their ears back and make a few stops. So I thought they were good. Offensively, Lewis and Mayala came up with a few big plays when they needed them to, but when it came down to those winning plays, MBT just wasn't there. Macbeth did not necessarily step up. There was... It was a lack of execution on the Edmonton side, and I do think that can come. But this game was right there for them to have, and I think if I were to take the Rider glasses off for a second, I do think this game was more Edmonton losing it than Saskatchewan winning it. But Edmonton is an improved team in the West, that is for sure. Out east, the Montreal Alouettes pick up where they left off after a victory over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And this was a complete team effort. That defense is really good. Now, we'll see how they look like without Stubblefield, as he tore his ACL in that game. After just a really kind of dipshit play on Strevler where he gave him a bit of an ankle. Yeah. I didn't like that. That one bothered me a little bit. So, but aside from that, like, I thought that the defense still did a really, really good job of bottling up Collaros. That they gave him no time to do anything. They were in his face. They covered a really good receiving group really well. The only success Winnipeg was really able to have was when Oliveira got going. But no, that really got in the... I thought that really got into Winnipeg's way. And for the Bombers, they struggled. This offense looked bad. Oliveira was kind of the only one getting going. And I think, honestly, a lot of it was on Collaros. This was a bad Zach Collaros game. There was a lot of receivers opened that he missed. There were decisions that he made that I didn't like. He played a poor football game, I think. And I think he'll bounce back. Like, I don't think, oh, well, Zach Collaros is cooked. The one thing I didn't like, they were bringing in Strevler a lot. And I get it's the new toy and you want everyone acclimated early on. But it was so clear Collaros' rhythm was off to start this game. I'm not saying it was because Strevler was in there, but they kept pulling him in and out. And so it's tough to really get that rhythm going. They finally get it at some points with Oliveira, but overall, this was not an in-sync offense. And that was, I think, a little frustrating on the Winnipeg side. Their defense is still quite good. That they have, I think, more than made up for the loss of Jeffcoat along that defensive line. But yeah, the offensive execution just needs to be, I think, substantially better going forward here for Winnipeg. Out in Calgary, I was at the game, so not the most detailed of notes, but I thought the Stampeders looked all right. Admittedly, those were, I thought, two of the least impressive teams I saw all weekend. Ottawa still to come on Thursday here against Winnipeg in week 2 as they get the bye to start the season. But like I didn't watch this Calgary-Hamilton game thinking, oh, watch out Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and BC, or watch out Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa. Here come these teams. I kind of just thought, well, we pitted two evenly matched teams against each other, and that's not a compliment to either of them. But a couple of things stood out for me. Calgary, I liked the defense quite a bit. I thought that they gave Bo Levi Mitchell a few problems in this one, and I think Bo gave himself some of those problems as well. But I thought defensively Calgary looked really, really strong. I thought, like I said, these are two evenly matched teams. I don't think they were actually. Just kind of going back on that now. I thought that I thought that Calgary was substantially better than Hamilton. I get the Ticats make the push late. Part of that is Calgary settling for field goals, and that is where they're going to need someone to step up. Like for Montreal, Philpott was the guy. For Calgary, I think they would like the other Philpott to be that guy and step up and turn some of those threes into sixes, and then you get a much more comfortable night at McMahon Stadium. But I thought Calgary was a substantially better team for the majority of this football game, and just Hamilton made a bit of a push to make it close. But I think banking on that for Hamilton going forward is a bit of fool's gold. And lastly, Toronto taking on BC. Toronto's defense was smothering, especially late in this game. This is a relatively high-scoring game, but I loved how Toronto's defense played. I thought their secondary was great, and they were able to get such a pass rush on Vernon Adams, especially late in the game when Adams, like they are looking to push the ball downfield a little bit. So Adams is going to have to hold the ball for a beat or two longer. And then you get Oromalade. I'm going to say that right at some point this year, I promise. You get Seresna, who get all kinds of pressure. They had a couple other big boys on that defensive line come up with a few plays. And then Winton McManus, there's like 9 of them on the football field. He was tremendous. So I thought this defense was probably, even though they gave up a bunch of points, I thought this defense was probably the most impressive defensive unit that I saw in week 1 in the CFL. And then Kadeem Carey helped get Dukes in a bit of a rhythm. They went away from him for a bit. Like, okay, let's get the quarterback going now. It's, well, you know what? Let's just keep factoring Carey into the run game a little bit more, because he was, I thought, their best player and stepped up in a big-time way. And of some of the new additions that we saw, I thought Carey had kind of the biggest impact offensively in week 1. On the BC side, I thought offensively they looked fine. Got to hold on to that football better. They had a few really key fumbles that kind of cost them and really let Toronto back into the game when it looked like the Lions were going to pull away from this one. Just a little bit sloppy with the football. And then defensively, they had some real troubles getting stops. And I think that they are going to notice the loss of Matthew Betts a little bit more than they were maybe anticipating. That there was a lot of room to run for Carey, and there wasn't a whole lot of contain on Dukes in big moments in this game. So that is something that I think is going to need to be addressed for BC if they are going to get to where everyone thinks that's going to be, and that is playing in the Grey Cup that they are hosting coming up in November. So an interesting week 1 in the CFL, to say the least. All right, here's what we're going to do. I was expecting to do 2 podcasts today. Didn't get caught up on Blue Jay stuff. We're going to stop this one here, and we're going to break it up into 2 parts. Your regular stick and ball sports here in part 1 of the podcast. Part 2, we're going to be looking at boxing, and we're going to be looking at the WWE. That one will probably be a bit briefer, actually. But we're going to break this up into 2 parts. Tomorrow is going to be the Catlin Autocast, as well as your regular Couch Potato Diary show. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm at Primetime Klein, twitch.tv/PrimetimePK, and you can email this show, couchpotatodiary@yahoo.com. Talk to you guys in a sec. I am out.